And we're live and we got coffee. Good job, Susan. All right. Welcome, everyone, to our live chat. We have a lot to talk about tonight. A couple of topics. We'll talk about the tropics. I wonder at what point do we stop using the GFS long range to start to hype up our stuff? At some point we have to stop doing it because you start looking really, really foolish when you start to I don't know, make these posts. Let me just make sure. There we go, muted. I part of being on the CDM board, the certified digital meteorologist board, is to be an example of responsible meteorology in the digital space. And what's irresponsible is to say things like, I don't know, like the hurricane season is going to be catastrophic. For who? For what? In what way? The forecast from pretty much everyone, myself, the National Weather Service, the Colorado State, is pretty much average to maybe slightly above. Okay. Number of hurricanes, pretty much in the ballpark of average. Major hurricanes, pretty much in the ballpark of average. But we have major publications calling that catastrophic, calling that extreme. And here's the problem with that when you start doing that. And it's going to be a topic I'm going to touch on in in my presentation with the for the AMS starting in this June in just a couple of weeks. We need to stop this. Look, I get that everyone wants to have eyeballs. I get it, but we have to be better than that. We do. I mean, because at the end of the day, if we aren't honest with our public, then why are they going to listen to us? So, one of the things, if you are a young meteorologist, that you have to decide for yourself, and it's not easy. It's not an easy decision because sometimes flash and being over the top can lead to a lot of money. Let's just be honest. Our social media is based off of rage bait in one way or another, whether it's sports or politics or talking about crocheting, anime, whatever. It's always about trying to create a reaction, right? Same thing in wrestling, right? If you don't get a reaction, then you're not any good, right? You want them to boo you or cheer you or whatever. The point is to get a reaction, but that's fine for entertainment. We're not entertainment. Mm, good coffee. We are supposed to be individuals who, A, talk about the truth, B, talk about the different ideas are out there, and C, never, ever, ever say the science is settled. Don't ever say that because anyone who's a scientist knows that science is never settled. So, with that being said, we just saw over the past couple of weeks a lot of hype about the potential of hurricanes hitting the Florida coast and maybe a category 1 or 2. We've seen some publications claim that they are the greatest tropical forecaster of all time while removing all of their busts and not counting that in their accreditation that they bought via a marketing firm. We've seen some individuals try to create their own watches and warnings. Yeah, no, you don't do that because now you create confusion between the national government and and what you're saying, which is going to lead to confusion. So there's a lot of still Wild West out there. And believe me, it's been like that for decades. Okay. Going back to the old bulletin boards on AOL. All right. Yeah, I'm dating myself. That's true. You got the bulletin boards on AOL and then on regular websites. And you had um, MySpace. And of course, back then you'd get a lot of rage bait by ticking off your friends list, which is always fun. Yeah, I remember that. So look, you right, right. It's ridiculous. So for this week, because of all that, I picked a very special book, Our Fragile Moments by Michael Mann. It's a very interesting book, one that I read in the mornings after I got done forecasting, going over some of his thoughts. And I thought tonight would be a perfect night to show this book for one very special reason. Um, I do not agree with this guy one bit. Okay. But I respect his work. Okay. So it's important to read and to consider ideas that you may not agree with for two reasons. One, if they're right, you've learned something and you improved yourself. And if they're wrong, you've learned how they think, how they see the world, and how you strengthen your argument. So for those individuals who want to shelter themselves and only listen to ideas that they happen to agree with, those people are intellectually stunted. Okay, what you want to do is expose yourself to things you disagree with. And next week, I'll share a book that I do agree with. Um, but you want to expose yourself to ideas and he makes some good points, which is very, I want to make that very clear. It's a very good book to read. Okay. Um, but you want to expose yourself to ideas that you might disagree with because then that makes you a more rounded person. Okay. This is true on all aspects of life, including sports. I don't like the Yankees, but I'll watch a game to see what's going on. I mean, it's important. I'm keeping an eye on the Phillies. We all know I do not like the Philly fanatic, but I keep an eye on the Phillies to see what's going on. And, watch their closer get suspended for steroids. But is true in science as well. If you do not expose yourself to ideas that you might disagree with, to individuals that you might disagree with for whatever reason, you never become a well rounded individual. You never become a well rounded scientist. So, this is the book of the week. I say pick it up. It's a very good read. So, definitely check that out. Now we got that all out of the way. And again, we'll probably have a short week this week because look, there really is a lot going on. Start off with the tropics. It is as quiet as you could possibly have it. I mean, there's nothing going on, despite what the GFS was showing. And one European run, well, be fair, one European run did have some low pressure systems hanging around here, around the Caribbean. Wasn't really all that impressive here. Well, put a little circle here on this. So right around here, the um, the European was suggesting some low pressure systems could form. And of course, the GFS just decided to produce a hurricane all over the place and do this and this. And of course, everyone is all excited about that until it doesn't happen. So, why is it that I was like, no, this is not a realistic solution, but the model guidance was showing it. Okay, so first of all, how do you know when we're in a realistic situation? Well, for one, we won't have all this dust in place. The Atlantic right now is typical for this time of year. It's full of dust throughout the Atlantic from our friends in the Sahara Desert. So that severely suppresses any tropical development. Okay, regardless of what model guidance says, if this is hanging around the Atlantic and now it's pushing into Florida and heading towards the Gulf Coast, and the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America and the Gulf, who the hell cares? It's all spreading all over the place. That's my point. So when you have this in place, you kind of want to back off of the idea of strong tropical development because this basically chokes out the warm core process, right? So unfavorable conditions. Combine that with a whole lot of shear that's currently in place, it's not a very favorable atmospheric environment. You have some convection around here with an upper level low. And some of that is influencing some of the convection around here, around Central America and the Yucatan Peninsula and the Western Caribbean, but there's no sign whatsoever of any type of development. Meanwhile, off the southeast coast, there was some idea that maybe like a 10% chance that we could get a subtropical low. This is something that could spike the numbers in terms of the number of named systems this year. And that is, you get these cold fronts kind of dying out here to the north of the Bahamas and off the southeast coast, right around the Gulf Stream. And you can get a low pressure system kind of meandering about. It picks up some tropical characteristics, and it's barely considered a subtropical low pressure system. There's your named storm, right? So in the past, it would just be considered a gale. Then you'd have numbered subtropical systems, but not named. And now we just go named. So it's on par with tropical storms, and subtropical storms are on the same level now. So that could certainly enhance your total as far as above normal seasons. The average is likely going to go up over time, probably in about 10 years from now, where the National Hurricane Center will say, well, this is our new average, because you can't constantly have above average all the time. The average itself is going to change. So I would not be surprised as we move through June and early July that if you're going to see tropical development, it's going to be via some sort of stalled cold front out here and some sort of wave of low pressure trying to develop off the southeast coast. So again, I'm not really seeing much going on. And one of the key things I use, one of the key factors I use in terms of model guidance is actually the precipitable water values. It's easy, especially when you're starting out, to get confused by whether you have a cold core low or a warm core low when you see a bunch of L's hanging out around Florida or around the Caribbean. Because look, you still get cold core lows in the tropics. So, how do you tell? Well, I think the best way to do that is with the precipitable water values. Why? Because when you start to get a concentration, a little bit of a ball, let's say, of deep tropical moisture and you start pushing above 2 inches and start pushing towards a 3 inch amount, that's a pretty good sign of a warm core process evolving, and that will be your tropical low. So, do we see anything like that over the next 15 days? And the answer is no, not really. You have a lot of signs of tropical waves, absolutely, kind of like this triangle here and here. So you have your tropical waves marching across. You can see the influence of the Sahara Desert right out here, with all the dry air relative for the tropics. For the mid latitudes, plenty of moisture. In the tropics, that's dry air. So, not really seeing any type of sign of any type of strong low pressure systems or even minor developments or anything of that nature. So while I'm sure the GFS will be sharing whatever nonsense is out there, the reality is that there's nothing really out there, right? So that's where we are in the tropics right now. It's pretty quiet, but it is what it is. Now let's talk about our pattern overall. Now, I've been talking about this with premium members for quite some time. We'll touch on it tonight, but for more details, definitely want to check out the premium consulting membership as I talk about this every morning, along with all the videos. Now, this is the QBO, and we've been talking about the QBO for a while now. Normally, we focus this on the cold season. That's when it has the greatest impact. But in the warm season, it's very important as well. In terms of the changes going on, we're going from a positive westerly state to a negative easterly state in the stratosphere. Why is this important? When you have a westerly state, everything's moving along in the same direction, right? So this enhances the movement ever so slightly of the polar jet stream, and it reduces your potential for having blocks, right? So you're less likely to have negative annual patterns, or if they do develop, they tend to break down very quickly, like last winter, right? When you have a negative QBO, well, you have better potential because now your stratospheric winds are moving opposite of the polar jet stream in the troposphere. And you start to get a little bit of a factor here where the polar jet stream's a little bit weaker. Not a lot, it's not like a huge difference, but it's just enough. And as always in meteorology, it's just small little details that matter. You start to see more upper level lows, more high latitude blocking, more sustained high latitude blocking. Now, again, this factor really shows up really nicely in the cold seasons. In the warm seasons, it's very minor. But those subtle changes, we have to start watching for them now because they're starting to take shape at 30 millibars and eventually at 50 millibars. 50 millibars continues to weaken around 5 meters per second. The 30 millibars is probably right around -2 or 3 meters per second. So we're not talking about a strong drop yet. These type of anomalies are up here around 5 and 10 millibars. That's going to be more towards October and November when things could get pretty interesting around the northern mid-Atlantic, but hold off on those ideas just yet. The point here is that you should start to notice more upper level lows being a theme here. Okay. We've already started to see some of them in spring. Model guides is going to have a difficult time with this. So we already seen this once. We'll go over that real fast. Yesterday, we're producing an upper level low that just didn't make sense on the European operational. So what do you do when you see that? Because sometimes that could be, something doesn't look right. We'll talk about that in a second. Meanwhile, the stratosphere, as I've been talking about, is getting chilly over North America and over the Atlantic. Now, remember, when the stratosphere gets cold, it presses it. What happens is that it can't expand out into space, right? So when you have the stratosphere that's cold, it contracts, right? So when it contracts, the atmosphere in the troposphere expands. When the stratosphere warms, it grows, and so it presses down on the troposphere. So, what does this mean? This signal here would suggest, hey, there's going to be a lot of below normal heights here. Again, these are all observations, not model data. So this would tell me that you're going to see a nice robust upper level low to the south of the Aleutians. Why? Because you're seeing expansion at 10 millibars, warming at 10 millibars um, over in the stratosphere in this location. So the atmosphere cannot expand out into space. It then therefore has to expand downward. So when you're pressing downward, you're contracting and pressing down on the atmosphere in the troposphere, which leads to below normal heights, upper level low. On the opposite side, when you're creating a cold stratospheric environment, you are contracting the stratosphere, which means that the troposphere expands. When you expand the troposphere, you do two things. You increase 500 millibar heights on average, and you create a warmer atmospheric environment. So when we're talking about things like climate change and whatnot, what you typically want to look for a warmer atmospheric environment is a colder stratosphere. I know it's opposite from what you think, but the colder the stratosphere, the warmer the troposphere. That's basically the idea here. This is why when we go into towards the winter, we get all excited about stratospheric warming, is because the atmosphere as a whole in the troposphere is getting colder, right? Because you're warming the stratosphere and pressing down. So when we see this in the summer and we see this in the mid latitudes of this cooling of the stratosphere, this tells us that the air masses that we deal with more frequently in the summer are going to have the potential of being warmer, going to be more enhanced. Thus, my idea, which is working out really nicely back in mid May, of us shifting into a warmer, seasonable weather pattern for June. And that's exactly what happened today. And tomorrow and Friday is going to be just the same with temperatures in the 80s and 90s. So, this all tells me hey, 500 millibar heights are going to be more enhanced. Meanwhile, our tropical forcing is just, well, comical at this point. There is no El Nino or La Nina. Okay, we already know that. We're not really seeing any shift either way. The SOI is bouncing back from negative and positive states, so it's essentially neutral at this point. And as far as our MJO state, the best way I would describe the atmosphere is that we have a cold neutral state in the Encinal state, and so you're more likely in this environment to see an MJO phase marching through phase 6, 7, 8, and back towards neutral circle, occasionally moving into 5 Typically, you do not see one, two, and three in this environment. Okay. So, why is this important? Well, when it moves into phase 7 and 8, there will be an uptick potential enhancement for tropical development around the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean, and the Western Atlantic around the eastern United States. If the MJO went into phase 1, that would increase the potential off the African coast. Not really seeing that all that much yet, but I can't rule it out 100% by between now and October. But as it stands right now, um, not very impressive. What do I mean by that? Well, yeah, it pops into phase 7 and 8, but this thing shoots through these phases as fast as a hungry man moving through McDonald's. It's just shooting right through. It's not staying in place. It's not able to build up an influence in the atmosphere. Remember, there's always a lag time, and there has to be a factor of being able to build up an influence in the atmosphere to actually have an impact. This shoots through phase 7, 8 uh, very, very quickly. Eclipse 8 for one day, which isn't enough to really have a significant factor. So we're moving into a warm season where our tropical forcing is as diffuse and as wishy-washy as you could possibly get, right? It's as neutral as you could possibly get. So this creates a lot of chaos in the atmosphere. So you have to be aware of those little tiny signals that are showing up in the model guidance. So how do we pick up those signals? Well, again, we're looking at 500 millibars. And remember yesterday it produced this huge upper level low over New England. That is pretty much gone, but it does try to produce these upper level lows. Now, let's look at the themes here. Match it up to what we're seeing in the stratosphere, and you're seeing heights generally below normal around the Aleutians. Now, again, it's different wavelengths than what you would see in the winter. So, with this below normal heights here, you get more below normal heights over the Pacific Northwest. You get a shortwave ridge around the plains from time to time, and you get below normal heights around southeastern Canada, basically around Canadian Maritimes, Quebec. Meanwhile, in this theme, you're seeing a lot of above normal heights over the eastern United States, every so often building over the desert Southwest, which you would expect because it's a desert. But you're not seeing anything of, let's say, a deep trough over the eastern United States. You're getting this trough hanging around the St. Lawrence River Valley with the focus over Quebec. And so this would suggest that, hey, there's going to be some dying cold fronts in this area around eastern Pennsylvania, around the eastern Great Lakes, trying to push into our region. And you're also going to see 500 millibar heights rebound pretty quickly. You're also seeing this on the ensemble guidance, right? Look at this theme here, okay? Where you're getting this weakness hanging around between two ridges that keep on trying to hold on. You want to add AI? Let's add AI. What the hell? We'll throw it in a party. And again, same type of theme. You do not want to pull up on the idea of taking anything verbatim here. What you want to do, again, look at the themes, look at what's going on in the overall atmosphere. What are the three models saying? What are they trying to show? They're trying to show overall polar jet stream is going to get shoved to the north, which is expected, but even more so. With that process, we have to keep an eye out for upper level lows cutting off, right? That doesn't necessarily mean strong upper level lows, but they can be pesky and a little pain in the ass when you're trying to forecast 7 to 10 days out. You know, when you have that birthday party you're trying to figure out, well, the model guys is going to create a lot of havoc as a result of that. Combine that with the overall wind pattern here, even around these upper level lows, is going to be from the southwest. So where are we getting our air masses from? The Gulf Coast and the Atlantic, right up the East Coast. So above normal temperatures, increasing humidity, slow dying cold fronts, thunderstorms. That's the overall theme. And that takes us into our forecast for the next 90 hours. Currently, right now, it's pretty quiet and it's nice and warm out there. There's our cold front for this weekend. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Stephen, this cold front's already in the Great Lakes. Why is it going to take so long to get here? Well, it all comes down to the upper level winds. You see, Right now, and really over the next couple of days, the upper level winds are going to be coming in from the southwest. Okay. So they're going to be running parallel to the cold front boundary. Whenever you have upper level winds running parallel to a frontal boundary, the frontal boundary is going to move like molasses. It's just going to crawl. And with that, you're also going to lose the ability to have strong cold air transport. So, this setup here supports the continuation of warm air and moisture getting driven up into the mid Atlantic and a slow moving cold front. And so as a result, the cold air transport, even this morning, was stronger here than what we're seeing now. The bulk of it is focused up over towards Quebec, central Quebec, and over the eastern Great Lakes, it's very weak. So this tells me that even when this cold front gets through our region on Saturday, it's not going to have a huge change in the 850 millibar temperatures. And those 850 millibar temperatures are going to be able to rebound very, very quickly. So, not strong frontogenesis in this setup. On our water vapor satellite picture, you can see why it's going to be absolutely beautiful for tonight into tomorrow morning and throughout the day tomorrow. This is a lot of sinking air because you have your upper level low here, upper level trough here, upper level low here. So, between all of these below normal, below average, not below average, but low heights, you're going to get enhancement over the mid Atlantic. And so you're getting rising heights here and a lot of sinking air. Rising, 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 sinking. So as a result, we're going to end up being pretty quiet for the rest of this week and warm. So if you're heading out to the beach or something like that, hey, it's going to be perfect. You go out, get your tan, you go out and garden, whatever you want, because we're not expecting much in the way of rainfall. And you can see that very nicely shown up here on the infrared satellite picture. And oh, by the way, that pesky smoke that was hanging around, well, that's all out in the Atlantic now. So the air quality is a lot better too. So a lot of good news here. And as far as the air quality over the next 18 hours or so, let's pull this up. In fact, hey, let's go out to 48 hours on the 18Z here. Not a lot going on. Look at this, beautiful. Now it's not perfect. Okay, if you have asthma or anything like that, probably want to just be aware, have your asthma medication nearby. But it's certainly not this. This was sitting over us this morning. Now we're pretty much at a lower smoke amount in the atmosphere. So it's not perfect, but it's improved. So certainly better news there. At 500 millibar PVA, again, our upper level low is far. Remember, last week where we were concerned about that upper level low hanging around the region off the East Coast? Well, look at it now. So, what can we learn from this? Well, model guidance is going to tend to overdo these upper level lows. Okay. And so it's not as impressive, and they're going to be more progressive further to the east. So, again, when you start to see powerful upper level lows sitting over the mid Atlantic, you have to ask yourself, does that match up to all the observations that we just talked about? The answer typically is no, because we have a colder stratospheric environment where we're at. So, yes, upper level lows, keep an eye on them. No, stay away from extremes. Okay. So in this setup, by the time we get to Saturday, the PVA moving through at 500 millibars is pretty weak, right? The strongest focus is off towards the St. Lawrence River Valley. So when we jump down towards the mid levels, this is at 850 millibars. Yeah, we have pretty good frontogenesis here and pretty good PVA setting up, positive vorticity advection at the mid levels. So this tells me that you have a somewhat decent cold front. It's weakening, but you have some influence, enough lifting here to make things a little interesting. And you certainly have plenty of moisture. I mean, we're getting into that time of year where precipitable water could easily push up to about 2 inches. So this certainly could produce heavy downpours of some of these thunderstorms. But again, the lifting is kind of broken up. I mean, look at the frontogenesis here. It's not really all that impressive. Okay. Maybe 4 degrees Celsius, if that. So not a huge difference in your mid-level temperatures, and the surface temperatures are even lower. So again, I'm not seeing a strong cold front in this scenario. So when I take a look at the Cape, first of all, for Thursday, it's well almost non-existent. So I'm not really worried about anything aside from an isolated shower or two. On Friday, all your cape values, all your instabilities is focused out here. Why? Because this is where all your lifting is. Down here along the coastal plain, you have a lot of sinking air still. So that is going to limit your instability and create a lot of dry air. So this kills your cape values as well. Meanwhile, back here over the interior, okay, this is where you could expect some thunderstorms to pop up. Not widespread, not a washout, but certainly a few strong thunderstorms here and there. So you want to watch out on Friday for northern Connecticut, the Hudson River Valley, the Poconos, the Catskills, maybe northern New Jersey, but again, not widespread. Now we get to Saturday, and look at this theme here. Not really all that impressive. Now, this might be some missing data here, but even on Saturday morning, it's not very strong. So, what I did, because I was worried about this missing data, I decided to pull up the SKU-T on Tropical Tidbits. Great website, by the way. Definitely bookmark it and visit it. And a great website. So, when we take a look at the environment on our SKU-T here, and we'll jump to 18Z here. Again, not very impressive at all. This is conditionally unstable. If we get enough lifting, a lot of stability out here, up here around about 850 millibars. Very, very weak cape. Not really all that impressive. I mean, when I say weak cape, they only have 18 joules per kilogram. That's pretty weak. So, what does this tell me? Okay, and this is in the middle of the day on Saturday. This tells me any thunderstorms that form generally going to be weak, dealing with scattered showers, and I want to stay away from widespread ideas of rainfall. So while Saturday will be unsettled, I wouldn't say it's a washout. Okay, so taking a look at the mesoscale guidance here, and here's our cold front approaching for tomorrow. Again, there's an isolated shower threat I was talking about around Mount Pocono on Friday. Again, a lot of your focus is over the interior. Over the coastal plain, you could get an isolated shower, but not really all that impressive. And then as we move towards Saturday, now we can jump towards the European guidance here. And again, Saturday is looking more scattered. Now, when I see this, what it tells me is again, you have to take into account that we're dealing with convective precipitation. So the grids aren't so good in handling this, and what you get is kind of like this bleed out. So what I'm seeing here is a thunderstorm complex here, scattered thunderstorms here, maybe another one here and here. A lot of this is basically ground clutter and just maybe some lingering showers. But this is not a washout to me. This is a humid day on Saturday with temperatures pushing into the 80s, maybe a few 90s to get enough sunshine ahead of a thunderstorm or a thunder shower. And then you get a passing thunderstorm and then you're done. So this is not an all-day rain event for Saturday. This is more of a keep a eye to the skies, keep an ear to the skies, or any thunder, get the heck out of the pool, but not a washout in any way, shape, or form. And then on Sunday, it looks like it's going to be pretty nice for the most part. Mix of sun and clouds, a few isolated showers. And then our next cold front threat really is on Tuesday evening, Tuesday night, where again we could see a few scattered showers and thunderstorms, but we have time before we deal with that. So that is the overall thought process I have. So now it's time to answer your questions. And as always, we always answer all the questions that are in the live chat. Then we go to social media, that's YouTube and all that stuff. And then we see what we have left. And either we keep going or we end early for the night. We'll see where we're at, right? So let's see what we got here. Let's see. Card has looks like the GFS 18Z is doing the GFS things and has a fancy hurricane come from the Yucatan overland across Cuba, across Florida, and up the East Coast, just off the New Jersey coast. The model gets worse and worse with each upgrade. Yeah, they tried to pull this. Not look. I am happy to hear that the National Weather Service is actually adding, I think, like 150 or 125 meteorologists and scientists, which is very, very good. I'm very happy to hear that. Um, But to blame those cuts on the performance of the GFS just doesn't work because no other model is having these issues. This is a problem with the way that the model is handling the physics of convection, and it's creating convective feedback error, and it's creating complete and total chaos. That's how you get a hurricane forming over the Yucatan Peninsula and then trying to march up the coast. While no other model, literally none, not one other model in the whole world, pick the Korean, the Jamaican, whatever model you want to pick, none of them are showing anything like that. So why is that the case? Because all the models are getting the same data, the same observations, the same balloon data, all that stuff. It's because the model has a serious convective feedback problem. It has a serious grid issue, and that's why I'm not using it anymore. I know, it says something, but how can I use a model that's failing epically in every way, shape, and form? Literally, statistically, it's literally the worst model in the world right now. I don't want to say that. I would like to wave my American flag and say, go US models. I love using the NAM, the HRR, but the GF, even the CFS, I use from time to time for climate forecasts, long range forecasts. But I can't justify using the GFS anymore. I can't. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. If I want to build a movie for the Sci-Fi Channel, I'll use the GFS. But it just isn't usable anymore. The sunspot that gave us the big CME is now rapidly decaying. The other four groups seem to be pretty quiet. Yeah, there is another sunspot that is coming around the way that should be present for us by Friday, I think. That has the potential also producing another CME. I think, I mean, there's a huge drop off in the sunspots this past month. And I think that we're starting to rapidly move towards a solar, this stage is for a solar minimum, not at the solar minimum. But when I do the update this Friday, we've had a huge drop off from other previous months. It literally just cratered. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in June, whether that trend continues. At 10 millibars, looks like warmer pockets have developed in the Atlantic, off the New England and southern Canadian coast, and also in the mid Atlantic at mid Atlantic latitudes. Yeah, there's going to be some patches here and there every so often. The question is whether or not they get sustained, but that doesn't surprise me that we're going to see a warm patch here and there because the atmosphere is going to try to balance itself out. So it's not going to be cold throughout, but those little pockets, that's where we'll pop off an upper level low or two that we'll be keeping an eye on. Man's hockey stick is a travesty, and his lawsuits against people who question him are fundamentally anti science. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of some of the lawsuits and stuff, but you can't understand a man's process if you don't read what he's doing, if you don't read his books, right? If you don't read, and this is true no matter what, nor anything in life, you cannot understand someone who you disagree with if you never read what they're thinking. So I think it's a good book to read. He makes some reasonable points in terms of how to address um, energy. All right. In some of his analysis and statistics, hockey stick, the process that he went through in terms of developing it, well, let's just say I probably wouldn't have gone about it the way that he did. And I wouldn't sue anybody that disagrees with me. I'd invite them on and have a debate. Because again, only one or two things are going to happen when you debate someone who you disagree with. One, you strengthen your ideas, and you become a more well-rounded individual in terms of understanding why your ideas are superior to theirs and why you're right and they're wrong. Or you learn something and you say, maybe I need to adjust my ideas because they brought up some good points, and then make those adjustments. And again, either way, you become a smarter, stronger person. So I never see anything that is negative in that. Well, you can watch the Yankees if you have Amazon Prime. They are, well, where are they on Amazon Prime every Wednesday? I'm not sure because it seems at least one game a week is on Prime or Apple. I mean, that's the one thing I'm worried about with the Mets, right? Is like they're finally good, and now I have to deal with like ESPN, which I'm like, shoot me, okay? Apple TV. The one thing I'll say about Apple TV, I don't know about Prime, but Apple TV, you can actually put on the Mets feed, so it's actually better in that respect. I'll give them props for that. To get an idea how much Sahara dust there is in South Florida is enough to cover the cars, so one needs to watch it pretty much every day, like the tree pollen season up here. Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty impressive, really. It's impressive how that works in the atmosphere. Your Easter egg hints are becoming a bit unnerving for late summer, early fall. Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, especially the one I wrote today. Um, the combination of tropical systems over the Western Atlantic and upper level lows around Tennessee are concerning. Okay. Um, I'm not saying anything's going to happen. I'm just saying I'm seeing a lot of signals where we're going to have to keep up on our toes here. I would not be surprised in August, September, and October that we're dealing with, at the very least, remnant moisture from tropical systems. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Easterly QBO and neutral NSO makes fall and winter forecasting exciting for 2025 and 2026. Maybe. We'll have to see the devil in the details and see what evolves here. Um, but again, it aligns to possibly some more interesting weather, that is for sure. Not making any promises. Tasmanian Devil or of the MJOs. Oh yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like. How do things look as far as wildfire smoke the next couple of days? How about the next week? I think that we'll see a decrease. I think we had a nice push this week. Unfortunately, um, the southwesterly flow is going to protect us a lot. So basically, the more that we get southwesterly winds, the better we'll be. More humid will be too, hotter will be, but less smoke, because the transport is going to be away from us. So that smoke, it might get to the Great Lakes, but then it gets shunted off towards Quebec and back to the Canadians, where they deserve the smoke that they keep on producing because they don't manage their forests, and then you produce these massive wildfires. Clean your brush, Canada, and you wouldn't have these issues half the time. So let's see what we have on YouTube. Holy smokes, we have a lot of activity. Holy smokes, look at this. Thank you very much in YouTube land. Look at that. I'm still learning all these crowns and stuff. I don't. Let's see here. Hi everyone. It's all about drama. Well, I don't see a problem. Let's see here. I'm always so curious who Steven's tossing under the bus. I'm not look, I'm not tossing I am tossing the general world under the bus. Okay? I just don't understand. Look, everyone's always trying to be like the most popular. I feel like I'm stuck in high school my entire life in terms of social media. Like, it's not important to scream the loudest. Sometimes it's just important to just be honest and be just it's it's difficult in a world where the loudest voice, whether it's right or wrong, gets the most attention. Um, but it's just something you have to ask yourself: are you looking to become the most popular or to be the most accurate? Let's see here. I wonder if Long Island and New York City can now see thunderstorms. New York City definitely better potential. Long Island improved. If you're in Southeast Long Island, you're more likely to get impacted by the stable maritime air masses. Excuse me, but your chances increase. You'll definitely get vivid lightning when we get thunderstorm complexes, that's for sure. Is our drought over? For the most part, we really did a number in May. That was really a good amount of rainfall. But if we go into an extended dry period again, which I don't think we will, but then we'd easily fall back. Let's see, Steve. I enjoy learning from you with each new video. Thanks again for doing these. Thank you. I appreciate it. And honestly, over the next couple of months, we have a lot of plans. So definitely stay tuned. A lot of things going to be, we're working a lot in the background, right? I can't say a lot, but I can say there's going to be a lot of exciting things on the way. So I'll put it that way. You know, I'll put it that way. We're certainly working our ass off. That's for sure, setting things up. And if funnel clouds can form in the absence of traditional significant tornado parameters, then how come we don't see these phenomena more in maritime weather environments? Well, see, here's the thing there there can be confusion in terms of funnel clouds and whatnot. Sometimes people see funnel clouds really scuttle, right? It's really just cold air coming down from a heavy rainfall event. Um, Sometimes you can get cold air funnels, which is rare, but you can see that. Um, One of the things I'm noticing is that we're seeing a lot more um, warnings for tornadoes from National Weather Service because we're seeing meso lows a lot better than what we ever used to, but they aren't always verified. Will it be raining Saturday morning? Definitely scattered showers and a few isolated thunderstorms around. Not a washout again, but definitely be prepared for some showers. What is the best time for strong thunderstorms on Saturday? If you see strong thunderstorms, it would be in the afternoon because you'd have, as it stands right now, again, keep an eye on the forecast. I'll have updates, as you know, throughout the rest of the week and into the weekend. But typically, let's say between 12 and 4 p.m. Um, how do you make long range forecasts? One, screwing up a lot. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I'm 45. I'm going to be 46 years old. So I've been doing this. God, I'm going to date myself. I've been doing this for now a quarter century. This is like doing long range forecasts, trying to figure them out. I started in college professionally at maybe like 22 years. And within those 22 years, as you know, on this very channel, I have had some epic fails, right? So, what you do when you fail is that you take those notes and you learn from it, right? You learn some of the rules. You learn like how a theory based on how the atmosphere should work, and then you look at the real time and what caused what altered the forecast, what factor. Because when you're doing long range forecasting, you have to understand it's not just saying, well, it's going to be El Nino, therefore A, because in reality, the orientation strength of El Nino or La Nina matter. Um, how that's interacting with upper level winds, like for example, where is our QBO state, and what is the state of the ocean of the Atlantic Ocean? How does that impact? All these factors come together, throw in a volcano or two, and then you end up with a lot of interesting factors to consider when you're combining everything. So that's always something that's always difficult to work out. So there's that. Then you have to learn all the science behind it, the calculus behind it, all the equations, and then you combine that and then you work that all out. I remember you talking about how we needed a lot of spring rain to get rid of the dry boundary, which would allow greater thunderstorm activity in the summer. How has this played out? We've actually really done well with improving our water table and our lower boundary layers. Now we have to see, based on the way that these thunderstorms start to develop, the cold front boundaries. What we're going to be watching out for is how the outflow boundaries work and whether or not we start to see other type of new boundaries take shape, like what's the sea breeze front going to do, whether we see more pulling. Let's say in Monmouth County, right? In Monmouth County, New Jersey, central New Jersey, it looks like it's just a flat ground, right? I mean, here, let me pull up a map here. Let me see if I can zoom in on this. Here we are. Okay, so here's where I live in Monmouth County, right? Like right around this area right here. And it looks flat, looks easy, right? But in reality, you have the coastal plain. You get this little ridge right around east central Monmouth County. In fact, here, let me see if I can find. Here we go. Okay, so let me pull up New Jersey real fast. Hopefully, I could do this. Might not be able to, but it's close enough. Okay. Okay, so I'm trying to make a good point here. Okay, so here is central New Jersey, right? And it looks flat, looks easy, looks like, hey, there's a coastal plain, no big deal, right? But in reality, you have the coastline, then you have this little ridge right about here, and then you get this bowl with higher lands here and here. So you kind of get this bowl here. Why is that important? Well, on one factor, you have air sinking in, right? So it leads to uh, this divergence over diving into this bowl. So that leads to a weakening of thunderstorms. But at the same time, if you get moisture to pull in here and basically build up, you can create this moisture gradient. Then you throw in, now that's just the geography. Then you throw in the urban heat island effect, right? Because we're building every damn building around all the I 95 corridor. So you have that factor interacting. So the urban heat island effect could enhance the circulation in the atmosphere at the lowest levels, which enhance thunderstorm and tornado potential here and here. But then if you get enough moisture to pull in, that could enhance the thunderstorm here, create more downburst wind gust potential here, and overcome the stable environment that is typically found right on the coast. And that's just one example. So when you're considering all these factors, you have to really look at the observations each year and see what's standing out the most in that respect. Let's see here. When do you think ocean temperatures will get to 70 degrees? Usually that's like July. Uh, will we see an enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms? I'm not expecting anything in the immediate future, but we'll likely see it eventually. Let's see. Back to the premium chat? Do we have anything on Facebook or anything? That's right. Give me a chance to have some coffee. Okay, let's see here. Card says ability of radar and satellite imagery to pick up what is going on so vastly greater than what it was even 10 years ago, much less 30 or 40 years ago. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to consider that as a factor. It's called Atlantic Highlands for a reason. Yep, that's true. Used to driving those dips and rises every time I go and own the Garden State Parkway from Atlantic City. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. When you actually drive it, you really learn just how hilly it really is. Anything else on social media? All right. So it looks like we have some pretty good questions here. Hopefully I got all of them. Looks like I did. So the overall thing here that I want to make sure that I get across to everybody is, and something I'm going to be talking about when I do this seminar chat, which is going to be fun. I'm presenting at the AMS. That's going to be great. There's a whole lot of like-minded individuals, or some who aren't like-minded, that I get to talk to and meet. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. But I'm going to have to press this quite a bit. I might get in trouble with it. I don't know. I don't care, but someone has to say it. We need to stop hyping up events. I just had, like I said, one individual today or one organization today, catastrophic hurricane forecast for the season. I'm like, it's near all normal. Last year, you could make that case because they were like forecasting like 30 hurricanes or something. That, I mean, it would certainly be a very busy season. But when you use words like catastrophic, yeah, you're going to get a lot of people to follow you and click your links and see all what you have to type. And maybe that's the name of the game for you. in terms of driving viewership. But at some point, as atmospheric scientists, we are responsible for educating the public. You have to take responsibility on how you are using the presentation you're using, and then don't get upset when people stop believing you because it wasn't catastrophic, because New York City isn't underwater, because the world didn't end. Okay? So when you make these statements and it don't happen, gee, I wonder why we have such a low trust in science and experts. Because you spent the last 20 years trying to scare the hell out of everybody. Someone lies to me repeatedly or exaggerates repeatedly, I'm less likely to believe them. So I try to stay away from that because I think you deserve that. And with that, I think we answered all the questions for tonight, and we did pretty well. Oh wow, the Phillies and the Blue Jays are tied. I can't stay up for the Mets. I'm sorry. I'm 45, going on 46. I can't do 10 o'clock baseball games. I don't know why MLB cannot just say, "Gee, make sure all games start 8 Eastern throughout the entire country." We do it for football. We don't start football games at 10 o'clock, do we? So I don't know. I think that should be the way that it should go. But that's another topic for another time. You turn into a pumpkin by 9:30. Yeah, pretty much. I'm incoherent by now. It's sad. My 9-year-old self thinks I'm an idiot. I'm a putz because I can't stay up past 9. 9 after 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock after this, I am going to shut down. I'm going to get ready for bed. I'm going to hang out a little bit, watch a little TV, probably pass out in 30 minutes. I guarantee, even with the coffee doesn't matter. Coffee keeps me going for like another couple of minutes and then I crash out. So it is the way it is, right? That is it for tonight. Thank you as always for joining and watching, and I really appreciate it. Your questions are awesome. I really appreciate it. If you want to help the channel, definitely spread the word, let people know, share it on social media, and obviously in the summer you're not going to get a lot of people, but in the winter, hey, maybe we get a huge amount of people, 1,000, 2,000, 7,000, 450,000. I don't know, but whatever it is, I appreciate you. And as always, stay safe out there.